March 2021. Jacksonville, Florida, the city is barely awake. The kind of early hour where the streets belong to delivery drivers and hospital workers and people coming off night shifts. Nobody who is supposed to be out there yet. But law enforcement have been building this case for nearly 2 years. Surveillance, digital forensics, witness interviews, a case constructed quietly, piece by piece, while the subject of that case was posting videos online, releasing music, and building an audience far beyond Jacksonville's city limits. While the view counts climbed, the file got thicker. While the song spread, the case got closer to complete. When they moved fast. Hakeem Robinson, known to the streets and to the internet as Ksoo, was taken into custody and charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. 2 murders.
Robinson.
Hakeem Robinson.
Hakeem Robinson.
Hakeem Robinson.
Hakeem Robinson. Hakeem Robinson, known as Ksoo.
Ksoo.
Ksoo, whose real name is Hakeem Robinson, is a well-known Jacksonville rapper facing 2 murder charges.
2 young men whose names had already been turned into album titles and social media taunts. 2 families who had been waiting for this morning longer than anyone should ever have to wait. But here is what the news coverage didn't tell you. The case against Ksoo was not built on a tip or a surveillance camera. The most critical piece of evidence prosecutors had the person who agreed to take the stand against Hakeem Robinson was his own father. To understand how a family arrives at that moment, you have to understand who Hakeem Robinson was before he became Ksoo. You have to go back to the Northside. Let's go back. Chapter 1. The Northside Jacksonville, Florida is not a city that gets a lot of attention. It doesn't come up when people talk about great American cities or cultural epicenters. But the people who grew up on its north side in the apartments and the blocks between Moncrief Road and the river know exactly what it is. Because they lived inside it. Into this world, Hakeem Robinson was born.
Hakeem Robinson.
Hakeem Robinson.
Hakeem Robinson.
Hakeem Robinson.
Hakeem Robinson. Hakeem Robinson, known as Ksoo.
Ksoo, whose real name is Hakeem Robinson, is a well-known Jacksonville rapper facing 2 murder charges.
His household, on its surface, looked like thousands of others. But the details, as they would later be laid out in a courtroom, were complicated from the start. Abdul Robinson Sr, Hakeem's father, was not a man operating at a distance from the street world. According to prosecutors and his own eventual guilty plea, he was a senior figure in the same organization his sons would later become the public face of. Ace top killers. This is the detail that reframes everything.
Then they all rats. And when the pool get on the stand, the nigga, I'm gon' call that 6 block. Tell him how we get up close and face shit. Y'all can ask Lil Crocker, he the one who got his face.
Ksoo is often discussed as a young man who chose street life. And choices were made, but the foundation those choices were built on was not neutral. Hakeem Robinson did not discover this world as a teenager. He was raised inside it by a father allegedly helping to run it, alongside a brother, Abdul Robinson Sr, known as Krazy K. His cousin Antonio Tilly Jr, who would later rap as Tilly, was woven into the same fabric. Did not recruit Hakeem Robinson. For the Robinson family, it was closer to a legacy. Chapter 2. The formation of Ak emerged from Jacksonville's north side in the mid-2010s as tensions between the north side and the west side calcified into something organized. The most visible figure on Ak's side was Yungeen Ace Bullard, whose story would become inseparable from the violence surrounding it. But embedded beneath Ace in ways the music didn't always make visible were the Robinsons. Hakeem, his brother, their father. What made Ak different from what came before it in Jacksonville was its relationship with music and social media almost from the beginning. Documentation was power.
Play that shit on TNT.
An audience was leverage. If the conflict was going to happen anyway, controlling the narrative of it meant something. Hakeem Robinson absorbed that logic and took it further than anyone else in Jacksonville's street scene had gone. He understood something specific. The more precise you were, the more real you seemed. And the more real you seemed, the larger the audience grew. He was about to put that theory to work. Chapter 3. The night that changed the city before any other albums. The viral posts. The national controversy there was one night that set the terms for everything that followed. June 5th, 2018, Yungeen Ace suggested his crew go out to eat. His younger brother Trayvon had just graduated Ridgeview High School. His best friend, Royale Devon Smith Jr., known as 23, had a birthday coming up, a reason to celebrate. Ace would later describe the decision in words that are hard to unhear. He said it was something they didn't do. They cooked. They didn't eat out. But that night he insisted. Around 11 p.m., as the group left the restaurant and moved toward their vehicles, a silver Chevrolet Cruze came alongside them. More than 30 shots were fired into the car. 3 men went out to dinner, only one came home. Trayvon Bullard, 18 years old, the graduate. Royale Devon Smith Jr., 18 years old, the birthday boy. Jacoby Groover, 19 years old. All 3 killed. Yungeen Ace was shot 8 times. Doctors didn't expect him to survive. He was released in less than 24 hours and walked directly into police custody on a separate parole violation. He later said that in the car during the shooting he had tried to physically shield his brother. His brother did not survive. Ace has spoken publicly about the peace deed, the survivor's guilt, the weight of knowing he was the one who insisted they go out that night. The Wasabi shooting did not start the war, but it changed the nature of it permanently. And the response from Fulio's side made peace impossible. T-shirts were printed "Rest in Piss 23" mocking Ace's dead best friend, sold at shows. Whatever line had existed between conflict and something uglier was gone. And Ksoo, watching all of it, recognized the moment for what it was. An opening. Chapter 4. The rise of soul. Hakeem Robinson's music arrived in the years after Wasabi, and it landed differently than anything Jacksonville had produced before. It wasn't polished. It wasn't trying to cross over. It was confrontational, hyper-specific, and completely uninterested in softening real events into metaphor. He named people. He described things that had happened. He referenced deaths, specific deaths, in language that made clear he was not speaking in abstractions. And it found an enormous audience. Not mainstream, enormous. But in the specific channels where this content lives, YouTube, Twitter, the networks that operate through reposts and reaction videos, Ksoo was building something real. People in Chicago, Atlanta, Los Angeles watched his videos and recognized the specificity of what he was doing. The willingness to be completely, uncomfortably direct about a conflict still actively happening. This is where his story gets darker. Because the music was not separate from the conflict, it was part of it. Every song was a provocation. Every video was a move in a game that had no referee and no rules. His audience grew because the content was real. And the content was real because the conflict had no end in sight. The music and the war were feeding each other, and Ksoo was the one holding both. But the thing that separates his rise from any ordinary story about a rapper building a following has to be said plainly. The people he rapped about were real. The events he described had happened. The names in his songs belonged to people with families, mothers, siblings, children who were hearing their loved ones reduced to punchlines in songs collecting hundreds of thousands of plays. Some of those people were still alive, still on the streets, still capable of responding. Chapter 5. The bloodiest year 201U is the year the conflict stops being something Jacksonville can contain or look away from. January, Axe boss goon Willie Addison shot and killed outside a club on Bay Meadows Road. Same month, cut to rapper Lil Buck Charles Quentin McCormick Jr. shot and killed. Then February, Fulio's 16-year-old brother Bibby Adrian Dennett Gaynor Jr. murdered at an apartment complex in the Moncrief area. 16 years old, dead because of the name he shared with his brother. What Ksoo did next defined his public image more than any song he ever released.
Baby bitch, Ksoo bitch, Glocks and Rugers, we be hitting shit. We flipping shit, don't run, we chase it down, we blitzing shit. We blitzing shit, don't be baby it out, we hit.
He put together an album. On the cover, photographs of fallen Qatar members, including Bibby, a child. He called it Bibby Out. Then came the videos, extended, sustained, deliberate posts bragging, taunting Fulio by name, referencing a 16-year-old's death with no restraint whatsoever. The videos got views, then more. They were screenshotted and archived and saved before they could disappear. Law enforcement was watching. The families were watching. And the screenshots being taken, the timestamps being noted, were already becoming the foundation of something that would take 2 more years to fully materialize. Chapter C. Jacksonville goes national, April 2021. Act artists Spinner Benz, Whopper with the Chopper, Yungeen Ace, and Fast Money Goon release a drill track that escapes Jacksonville entirely and lands in the national conversation with force nobody anticipated. It gets discussed on talk shows, in congressional hearings, by journalists who had never covered Jacksonville in their lives. A city long invisible is suddenly the center of a national debate about drill music and real-world violence. But here's what gets lost in those national conversations. The people debating the song were debating an abstraction, a policy question, a cultural phenomenon, a think piece, a panel discussion. Something that begins and ends within the boundaries of a media cycle. The people named in the song were not abstractions. They had mothers who were still waking up every morning inside a grief that did not follow a media cycle, a grief that had no off switch. A grief that the rest of the world had now decided was content and was consuming accordingly. And while the think pieces were still being written, while the platforms were still counting streams, the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office was putting the final pieces of a case together. The arrest was weeks away. Chapter 7. The investigation, A.N. the father, the investigation, had been running quietly alongside of Soul's entire public rise. While his notoriety spread, detectives were compiling a file that included not just the alleged crimes, but the documented behavior surrounding them, the posts, the videos, the songs, all of it dated, archived, preserved. Ksoo had not been discreet. He had not tried to separate his public persona from the events being investigated. In many ways, the case was built partly from the evidence he had created himself. But the arrest required someone willing to stand in a courtroom and say what they knew. Abdul Robinson Sr. agreed to plead guilty and cooperate with the prosecution, to testify against his sons, a father, agreeing to take the stand against the children he raised, in a murder case, in a city where cooperation with law enforcement carries consequences that extend far beyond any courtroom. We don't know what was said inside the Robinson family before that decision was made. Those conversations belong to people whose private lives no documentary can access. What we know is the result. The father agreed to testify. And the morning came. Chapter 8, The Arrest A&D, what followed March 2021. Hakeem Robinson is taken into custody and charged with the first-degree murders of Bibby and Lil Buck. His brother Krazy K faces related charges. Their father has already entered his plea. Local news covers it. National outlets pick it up briefly. Then the coverage moves on, the way it always does. But the families of Bibby and Lil Buck are still there. They were there before the cameras arrived, and they remain there after the cameras leave. Bibby was 16 years old. Lil Buck was somebody's son. These are not chapter headings. They are the reason any of this is worth documenting at all, not the music, not the view counts, not the courtroom drama. Two young men whose names were turned into content while their families were still in the earliest stages of grief. Chapter 9. The Legacy A.N. The question, what did Ksoo's rise cost Jacksonville? Not in charges or body counts, though those numbers are real. The harder question is what it cost in terms of what could have been. Because Hakeem Robinson was, by any honest measure, talented. The ability to hold an audience's attention, to make people feel something, to build a following that is not nothing. Pointed in a different direction, from a different foundation, it could have built something lasting. Instead, the cost of Jacksonville's cultural moment was written in the names of those who didn't survive it. Trayvon Bullard graduated high school and was dead within a week. Bibby was 16. Lil Buck was somebody's son. A 3-year-old girl was caught in crossfire in December 2015 and never got the chance to become anything at all. None of these people made an album. None of them went viral. None of them are the subject of a documentary. They are the people who paid for a war they didn't choose, in a city that was slow to look at what was happening, in a decade that turned grief into content and found an audience waiting. Ksoo sits in a jail cell while his case moves through the courts. His father testified against him. His brother faces the same system. The music is still out there, still circulating, still being played, with no regard for the consequences it left behind. What his legacy is depends on who you ask. Ask someone who followed him for the music, and they will describe an artist who documented a real conflict with a directness that mainstream rap rarely reaches, who brought a forgotten city into a national conversation, who was, whatever else he was, genuinely present in what he described. Ask the family of a 16-year-old whose name became an album title, and there's no legacy worth discussing. Only the irreplaceable details of a person who is no longer here, and the people who loved him who are. The posts were public, the songs were public, the album covers, the videos, the taunts, all of it visible, in real time to anyone who looked. Jacksonville can no longer say it didn't see this coming. The question that remains the one that outlasts every arrest, every trial, every documentary is not about Ksoo. It is about what a city owes the children it raises inside conditions like these, and what it costs everyone when the answer turns out to be not enough.